Hello, my name is Frederik Steinmetz for CGTuts Plus, and today I'll be creating an underwater scene with a couple of single-celled organisms that are feeding on some particles. And here's an idea of what that looks like. Okay, here we are in Blender, and let's start from scratch, because I really like the tutorials that start from the very beginning. I'll press A twice to select everything, press X and delete everything. Now first I'll add a camera and move it over here. Then I'll add an empty. The empty will be the point of interest of our camera, so select the camera, Shift select the empty, and press Ctrl T and make this a track to constraint. And you'll see the camera will now point at the empty, which is very handy if you want to look through the camera and change the look of the camera, the point of interest. You just look through the camera, select your empty, press G to move it around. And also it's a good idea for a scene if you're still testing a lot, add an hemi light, lamp hemi, and move this around and just change the angle a little. And the reason for that is if you have an empty scene without any lights, your objects will get rendered dark. Since it's a huge difference between 2.5 and 2.49, I am going to explain a couple of things that I do, just in case you're still used to the old 2.49. So I'll hide these just for sake of overview, and pressing H on a highlighted object will hide it, and press 7 to go into top view, and 5 on the numpad to go out of perspective view. And let's get started. Press Shift A on your keyboard, add a mesh, and let's choose torus. And this torus can function as the base of our mesh, but we have to modify it. So if I press Tab to get into edit mode, I can extrude parts of the torus. I'll Alt click on this rim and Alt Shift click on this one, and now we have sort of the base of the torus selected. I press 1 to get into front view, press E on the keyboard, and now I can extrude the two rims of the torus, or the two edge loops that we just selected. Okay, now go in here, press A on your keyboard twice, and this is a function that doesn't work in Blender 2.5 yet, the knife cut. So we have to find a way to work around that. I'll press Ctrl R on my keyboard and scroll up the mouse wheel until I have 4 lines, and confirm with the left mouse key. Press Y, and now do the same thing for the inner radius. So I press Ctrl R, and you can see now we're on the inner side because the pink line is shorter. And if I move the mouse, Blender will guess which one you mean, and I'll move the mouse until I'm at the inner one, and again produce 4 loop cuts. Alright, that's the belly of our animal, and let's press A to deselect everything, B to select both an inner and an outer loop, and scale them up. Do it again. A to deselect, B to select box, and then press S to scale them until you have sort of this bell-shaped thing. And let's make it a little smaller here. And in order to be able to see what I'm doing better, because with this flat shaded mode it's not that easy to see whether you have a smooth surface or not, I'll press T for the tool shelf, the object tools, and press smooth shading so we can see what our bell animal is doing. Now let's make the stem of the little guy. Extrude again, go down here, and we have to close the stem. I'll do that by alt-clicking on this rim, press E for extrude, then Alt-M on your keyboard, and then confirm at center. And that will extrude each of these vertices here, and instead of extruding them out, we'll extruding them in, and therefore closing the cylinder. That's it for now. But let's make the inner tube a little smaller, because actually let's scale them both at the same time. Okay, now I think by extruding I destroyed my loop circle. That is correct. Now that that those are all triangles, it's not a loop circle anymore. So let's do this a different way. Delete this middle vertex by pressing X, and then press Control Tab to get into face mode, and Alt click on, if you're able to, yeah, there we go. Alt click on these faces to select the face ring, press X, and then choose faces, and this way you get an opening. Choose vertex mode again, Control Tab, and now this still is a loop. We'll move it up a little, and then extrude, and then Alt M at center. Do the same thing here, Alt click E for extrude, Alt M, and then at center. And now we still have proper loop cuts. We still have proper vertex loops. It doesn't make much of a difference for the resulting mesh, but it's cleaner for us to make changes later on. So Alt Shift click on this loop, and if I scroll out a lot, I can see my stem's pretty big, and I want to scale the inside of the stem because it should look like a hollow tube, because that's actually what those animals look like. If I press X now, you see it is something weird, and I don't really like that, so I'll press Shift Z in order to only scale it along the X and Y axes, and ignoring the Z. If you press Z, it only scales it along the Z. If you press Shift Z or Shift Z, I don't know how you pronounce it, how you prefer it, you can select whether you want to only scale it along the x-axis or scale it along every other axis. Now let's make this a tiny bit smaller. Alt click always on the loops, and you can now use sculpt tools to get the bell animal shaped the way you want it to. But I'm not a huge fan of sculpt tools, because especially, I mean, they have improved a lot since Blender 2.5, but they still crash a lot, so I'm still sticking with proportional editing. And let me show you what that means. The sculpting tools are a lot of freehand work, so it's good for you guys who are used to Photoshop and drawing a lot, but I really prefer the precise versions of the tools. So the proportional editing gives you a lot of control over each vertex while still being able to manipulate a lot of vertices at a time. For example, I want to make the mouth opening of this bell-shaped little head, I want to make it push it down a little. And I can do that by selecting one vertex over here and press O to get into the proportional editing. Go to Enable and then push it down. You will see the entire head is moving, and that is because by default the area in which the proportional editing will affect is very large. So while you're still holding the the movement order or the movement mode of your vertex, scroll on your mouse wheel and you'll see the proportional editing tool the region that it affects will shrink. And so you can, while you're pushing it up, you can use the mouse wheel to get it exactly where you wanted it. And this is one start. And let's say this rim here is a little too big for my taste, so I'll alt click on one of the inner ones here and go to connect it and scale it down, scale it up, S, and then scale, and just move my mouse wheel until I like what I'm seeing. I'll select the upper one and move it down a tiny bit, always scrolling on your mouse wheel and checking your results. Okay, that looks a lot better. Now this mouth here is a bit flat. Let's just pump this up a little. So, okay, and the sculpt tools have been greatly improved in Blender 2.5. The multi-res modifier works awesome. It saves a lot of power while you're modeling in the viewport, but unfortunately it still crashes a lot, so I don't really use it. Okay, this is getting where I wanted to. Let's move this up a little using a very large proportional editing scale, and yeah, actually this is too small for my it's too large. The stem is too large for my taste still. So let's use the same trick as we did before, and let me just show you something. B for box, and it looks like we got all the vertices selected, but that's something that actually happened to me a lot recently, and I want you guys to be safe so it doesn't happen to you. Only half of the vertices are selected, and if I go into front mode by pressing 1 on your numpad, you'll see that not all of the vertices are selected, but if you go into wireframe mode by pressing Z on your keyboard, then you see all the vertices get selected, and that is because you can choose over here that you don't want the hidden vertices to be selected. If I do this and box select the lower bottom, you have everything selected, and if I choose this option, you also see that the vertices that won't be selected are going into hiding. If you don't want to click this button all the time, just while you're selecting, press Z and then box select in wireframe mode, and once you're happy with the selection and you want to check the results in shaded mode, then or in solid mode, then you can just press that to switch back into solid mode again. Now press S, and then I forgot to take out the proportional editing, so press O until this little circle here is at disable, and press S and then Shift Z and scale down the stem. It's a little too long by now, but that's okay. It's a matter of a second to correct that, and we'll do that later on. Okay, if I'm in front mode, I don't see the little mouth I created, so I'll press R and Z and then rotate my little animal until I see the mouth in front mode. Okay, let's make one final adjustment, and then we'll start on the hair of the little guy. I see here is a dent in the rim, and if I use this vertex with a proportional editing and move it down, you see I get a dent, and I don't really like that. So I'll just select those 3 or even 5 vertices and push them down. Scroll down the wheel a little and just make sure that you don't get this dent. Just push them down a little and then select only this one. And just make it a bit more tidy. You guys can do how much you want. I'm going to stop at this point. I think it's enough for this tutorial. Let's make the hair. For the hair, I'm going to the particle systems, and the particle systems are located over here with the little stars. Now, nothing here, so I'll press plus and call this particle system hair, and call the particle settings. We can call them hair again, but let's use the scientific term and call them ciliae, however you pronounce that. In German, they're actually the same word as for eyelashes, so could probably call them mouth eyelashes. So whatever you prefer. The hair, the emitter type will set to hair. And I think we're done. This looks awesome. we can just stop at this point. But just for funsies, let's take it one step further. Press Tab to get back into edit mode and select not this one, but let's select this one. I'll click on the this one. I'll click on the ring and it selects the entire edge loop. We have to assign this edge loop to a vertex group, so go over to Object Data and click plus on the vertex groups and just call this hair so we can find it later on. And now the hair group is empty. If you select it, nothing will happen. Get the weight up to 1 and select vertices that are supposed to emit the hair and click Assign. And if we go over to the particles now, we can choose the vertex group and we can choose how it affects our hair. You can have it affect the density, velocity, length, clump, and so on. We'll just choose density and use the hair. Now you see our hair is emitted only from these vertices, but it's emitted from the faces, and that's not what we want, because the hair we don't have much control over the hair because there are no faces, but Blender will still try to calculate the normals for the vertices. So we'll just set the vertices for the emitter, and we can uncheck the random because we are going to have full control over them. And the easiest way to do this is to check up here. We have 48 vertices selected, so let's not make 50 hairs per or 20 hairs per vertex. We only need 1, so let's get the number of hairs down to 48. So we have 1 hair per vertex. With the normal speed, which is the speed of which the particles will be catapulted out of the normals, we can also alter the hair length. And let's choose this. Looks okay to me. And leave the other settings as they are, because they will only get randomness into this, and I don't really want that. So let's just not tinker with them. And what else do we change? We want to render the emitter, but we want the hair to have another material than the bell-shaped animal. So for later on, I'll already select material number 2. And yes, I guess that's it for now. Oh right, for the rendering as well, select B-spline. I can show you why this is a good idea. Let's uncheck it, and let's save this. CG. And just because Blender tends to crash fairly often, and let's make them a little bit curvy. If I don't select B-spline and render this, you'll see that the hairs have jagged edges. Of course, we want to prevent this, so I always set the steps up to 9, which is the highest that works for B-spline. And let's render this again, and you can see the hairs are now a lot smoother. And don't worry, the material will be changed later on. Set on the Brownian again, and that's it for the hair for now, for the basic settings of the hair. And let's use the hair dynamics. The hair dynamics will make the hair behave as a cloth modifier. So if you have any forces that are affecting the hair, they will act like strings of cloth. For example, if I set a keyframe for location here, and then move over 20 frames by pressing the up arrow and move it in the X direction, and press another keyframe for location, then you can see if I change this to timeline, this to timeline, you can see that our animal moves, and if I animate this, you see that the hair does some wild stuff, which is of course not what we want. So go to the graph editor, and we don't have anything else, so press A twice to select everything and delete the keyframes. Okay, now our hair is dynamic, but I don't like the settings so far, so let's tweak them a little. I'll set the mass up to 0.8. The mass is of course how heavy the cloth is. The springiness is, well, you can just drag over with the mouse. It will tell you what it is. But the springiness is how long it takes for the hair to get back into its original position. Okay, now we'll see we don't really have enough hairs for my taste. And also, if you look closely, they seem to be starting outside of the bell animal. We can fix that easily by going into tab into edit mode, press Shift D to duplicate those and move them, well, press O to get rid of the proportional editing and move them down a bit. Now, since we duplicated them, they also became a part of the hair group automatically, which is what we want, but we don't want the top. We don't want the top layer of the hairs, or the top ring, to be a group of the hair anymore. And just to be sure we have the right one selected, press select here. Now go with your mouse over one of the edges, press A to select nothing, and then alt click on the ring and say remove them from the hair group. And you see now our hair is emitted from the inside of the bell animal. And let's find this loop again here and press W to subdivide it. And this way we can change it will make one vertex between two vertices, doubling the number of vertices, and now it's 96, so we have to double the number of hairs as well. And you can see that our hair is now double the strands. Those are not pointing up anymore. We can try and fix this by flipping the normals, Control F. Nope, doesn't work. Doesn't matter, since we're having dynamic hair anyways. We'll find a way to cheat around that as well. Let's just see what happens if I simulate this. The hair is moving up. With you guys, the hair will probably be moving down because I tinkered with the settings earlier. I have set the gravity to a positive value. And this accidentally got saved as other standard settings. But we want this. We want the hair to animate up and down, so it looks like it's gently pushing in the water. And for this, I found the best solution to be animate the gravity. First of all, we leave the gravity at 0.4 and make the hair go up until here. I'll hover with the mouse over this field and press I to make a keyframe. And now I'll go, let's make this a little more room, go to around here and get the gravity down to minus 0.8. And don't forget to press I for a keyframe again, and let's bake this. That was too late. Okay, since I have already prepared the gravity curve, I'm just going to copy the curve from my other file. Okay, I copied the keyframes from my previous project, and let's just press Alt A to check what our hair is doing. Right now, the beginning looks fine. It goes up, and over here it kind of collapses, and then it's supposed to go out again. It does that, sort of, but not long enough. I want the cilia to go down here at least. So what we can do is we can check until where we like the cilia. It's about here, And let's just move this keyframe over. So right click on it, press G and then X, and move it over here. And also select just this handle, press G and then X, and make this curve a bit steeper. Okay, you can continue tweaking this curve by editing your keyframe until you have just the wave motion that you like. And it took me quite some time to get it exactly how I wanted it. So I'm going to skip this part for now. And if you come into troubles like this, that means the hair is not calculated at this time. If you're scrubbing through, you can get even really nasty results. All you need to do is press Shift and left arrow to get back to the first position and animate it through. Blender will only animate by default until frame 250, and we have to change that by first of all changing this. I changed it to 350 so we got some time, and also the hair will only bake if we have this emitter selected and click on the particles, then we can say some different properties, and you can see here the cage has 250 frames, so let's increase it to 350 and go over here where it's still moving, press Alt A again, and you see the animation continues. Okay, that looks quite nice, but I'm sure you'll get even better results if you put some more work into it. Let's make the little fella move, and for that I'm going to use a simple rig. I'll go down to the very bottom of the animal in edit mode and press B for box select and select only the lowest vertices down here. Press Shift S and cursor to selected. With Shift S it's for snap, and I forgot to deselect this upper here, so the cursor snaps to the center of all the vertices selected. Press A and press B and select these. Shift S, cursor to selected. Now we're at the very bottom of our bell animal, and it's probably a good idea to change the center point down to here, because if we rotate this now it does not look very real, and just in case we need to scale it or rotate it later on, we'll get the cursor down to this. Control Shift Alt and C will get you this menu, and we'll say origin to 3D cursor. And now I realize the stem is a bit too big, so I'll select all of the stem vertices, press S and Shift Z to scale them down. There we go, that looks a lot better. Okay, now tab out of edit mode and Shift A and create an armature. Select single bone and press tab to get into the edit mode of the bone, and drag this up to about 1/3 of the way. Then press E to extrude. It's the same thing as modeling with meshes, and move it up 1/3, and again E and move it up 1/3. Okay, let's make this armature work for the bell animal. And to do that, first select the animal, then Shift right click on the armature and press Ctrl P and select automatic weights. With automatic weights, the bones will check at which place, which vertex is closest to the bone, and then we'll give out the weights of the bones accordingly. So if we go to Control Tab while the armature is selected, we can see what the bones are doing, and it looks a bit funny. And to fix this, we will go into weight paint mode. There you see the inner side is not affected in the same way as the outer side. So what I often do is I rotate the bone so it's really distorted, and all the vertices that are not affected enough are outside. And then I'll just, since this is a very simple rig, I'll just use the weight paint to get them inside here. And I don't know why, but for some reason the airbrush and smooth stroke and also the spacing don't work. So if you turn them off, you can see that works. Your vertices are now affected by the bone fully, and of course the same thing needs to be done for the middle bone and the lowest bone as well. And what happens if you click on one bone is, you can see it if you go over here, Blender will automatically jump to the group that the bone that is assigned to the bone. It's important that the group has the same name as the bone. If you want to see the name, it's N, and scroll down here. These are the bones, and the item is the armature, and this bone is called bone. You can change the name, but since we have 3 bones, bone 0, bone 1, and bone 3, bone 2 is fine. And of course we don't want our animal to be shaped like that, so while you're in pose mode, you can see that when the bone is blue, press A to select until all the bones are selected, and press Alt R to clear their rotation, and they are back in their original mode. Okay, now our animal is already rigged. Now if I move the armature, our particles will stay in the place that they were supposed to. I see there's a slight arrow here. Let's fix this real quick. Select the animal, Alt tab into weight paint, and go to the tool over here and say subtract. We don't want this bone to affect the lower vertices, and this bone is supposed to affect all of them. And I guess this should do for a simple rig like this one. Alt R, and yeah, as you see, once you bake the particles, they will stay in place no matter what you do. No matter what you do to the emitter, no matter what you do to the force fields, and so on. So it's a very good idea to bake the particles if you're happy with them, but if you want the particles to adjust to the new situation, you press free bake and just bake them again. I'm not going to do that right now because we'll get to the animation of our little animal far later. This concludes the modeling part of the tutorial, and I hope you join me next time when I'll show you how to use custom particles in order to feed the little guy.